I recently traveled from one end of the country to the other in order to visit my boyfriend of 3 years, only for him to dump me 2 weeks into the 3-week trip. I was forced, financially, to continue to stay with him for the remaining 5 days, living through my own personal hell, and would have given anything to distract myself. For better or for worse, he had Hogwarts Legacy downloaded on his computer, and so I decided to play it all week. Now, personally, I was opposed to purchasing the game myself, as I did not want to support Joanne Rowling, and was more than prepared to die without ever experiencing this game, which honestly looked super bland and boring from previews I had seen. To my surprise, I found myself genuinely enjoying the gameplay of wizard combat, and those nostalgic strings inside me, I thought to be long dead by this point, got reanimated and tugged on fiercely.
Ouch!
There was plenty of tedium, don't get me wrong, but I forgave a lot of it, considering the alternative for me was to alternate between bawling my eyes out and having to be in the same room as the jerk who broke my heart. For all its flaws gameplay-wise, the game had one real job in terms of its story. The same job every story, more or less, has, and that was to convince me its villains were wrong and that its heroes were right. It had over 20 hours to do this, and it wasn't able to by the end. The villains are right, actually. Hello, lovelies. I am your hostess, Madame Dia, and this is ConsuMedia. And on today's menu, we have some much-needed nutritional media for you to consume. So let's get to it. Part 1. Isadora Morganac, a.k.a. Painy the Witch.
You're fired. Ow! See, this is what I'm talking about.
The story of Isadora was an interesting one to me, and genuinely surprising. I know that we are living in the golden age of video games, but with good writing. But I do go into each experience assuming the writing will be subpar at best. Isadora's story was one worthy of this universe, and a little treat for my brain, managing to dive into some new territory in a world that feels creatively bankrupt in the wake of the third Fantastic Beasts movie.
This is the true chili.
Isadora grew up in a small village plagued by famine caused by a terrible drought that claimed the life of her brother. Then along came a group of witches who transformed the land and restored it with magic. Unbeknownst to her, she herself was also a witch, and that's why she was able to see these magic users for what they were, and was amazed by them. She eventually attended Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and even became a professor, attaining status and the respect of the same exact group of witches she had looked up to, who saved her life. But magic did not solve her greatest problems. Her father became petrified by grief after losing her brother, having never spoken since. She wanted desperately to take away his pain, and expressed this to her mentor, who said magic shouldn't be used this way because we don't know what will happen. It's uncharted territory. So, Isadora sets out to chart it. She uses magic to remove her father's pain, and he is grateful.
Thank you.
But her fellow witches are disgusted and fearful of what she did, but they take no action against her. Some time passes, all seems well enough, until the witches discover that Isadora's father has become a zombie, devoid of all emotions, not just pain. It is unclear what causes this. Is it a side effect of the pain removal from earlier? So this is the eventual fate of everyone who has their pain removed? Or did Isadora continue to perform magic on her father and simply went too far? We don't know because the story doesn't show us. The teachers all organize an intervention for Isadora, who they discover is performing magic on her own students, wanting to remove pain from everyone in the world, and then using that raw, extracted emotional magic power for unspecified good deeds.
Magic. Left over from a spell I devised to remove pain, but if used correctly, its power can be used to do even more good.
Why would you want to store such magic away?
I only need to keep it safe until I can convince my colleagues of its worth.
The teachers bump into a student who has recently undergone this pain removal process. They seem fine, though. No indication that they are a zombie. So, all good? They confront Isadora and draw their wands, telling her to surrender to them. She defends herself, and they kill her.
What?
They straight up kill her. There are Death Eaters in Harry Potter who got better treatment than her. No trial, no imprisonment. This is the Wild West, baby, and we are shooting first and taking the law into our own hands. I was so shocked by this. It was so sudden, and the story and characters make it seem justified, but I never felt that way. Maybe I missed something. It has been known to happen.
Am I not comprehending things right? Like, am I not able to understand basic, storytelling here? Because I feel lost.
But it really seemed like this girl's heart was in the right place.
Oh, Neve, imagine the good we could do. Everyone is in some kind of pain. You've kept this power to yourselves for so long because you fear it. I choose to embrace it. Everyone feels pain. And why? Because of your arrogance? Your obsession with secrets? He won't suffer any longer. Not my father, not my students, no one.
She didn't seem like she was too far gone either. She was just partway through her own research. Very self-determined, but not evil. She had a noble goal in a field that was unknown. She was exploring the possibilities. But this made everyone else uncomfortable, and so they killed her without really having so much as a rational conversation beforehand. It's so odd to me. Really bizarre that the other teachers are painted as the good guys for essentially being overreactive, trigger-happy cowards. But I guess this is realistic to our own world. After all, we do celebrate cops all the time.
Arrest me, but make it sexy. Sell me some meth, please, so I can get arrested by this daddy of a cop.
It's just weird to me that the narrative paints what it clearly thinks is this obvious conclusion to Isadora's story, but I'm left baffled by it. I want more context. I want more accountability. I want justice for Isadora, who is incidentally now one of my favorite Harry Potter characters. She did nothing wrong, really. She only wanted to help people and was constantly being told she was wrong to try, being written off by her peers as crazy for challenging the way things are. You can't use magic to remove people's pain. Why not? Because we don't know the consequences. Well, that's a garbage reason. Time to fuck around and find out. And that's what Isadora did. She was given a half-hearted, meaningless, and unconvincing warning not to pursue her goals.
So I'm to watch as my father's pain destroys him.
It is not your pain to take.
The next thing she knew, the same guys who didn't believe in her and actively wanted to stop her without clear reasoning just straight up killed her. From her perspective, this story is fucked. Part 2. The morality of pain killing. Okay, I've seen Pixar's Inside Out, so I know that pain can be a good thing. It shouldn't be ignored, it should be embraced. It makes you appreciate the good parts of life more, and it's a natural response to misfortune. But the pain we see in this story is different. It's debilitating pain, the sort that actually prevents you from living your life. Isadora's father is a shell of a man, not experiencing anything but pain. He effectively has no life left to live, and so he doesn't really have anything left to lose. So what's the harm in Isadora trying to make things better for him? At worst, he becomes a zombie, but is that really much different from how he already was? What sort of life is constant emotional or physical agony, to the point where all you can do is endure this pain, with no room for any other experience? In the game, we are introduced to a student named Sebastian, who is desperately looking for a cure to his sister's curse, a condition which causes her to feel excruciating pain constantly, to the point that she can no longer attend Hogwarts school or practice magic. Her life and everything she loves has been taken away from her.
Anne's pain is more than physical. It has changed her entirely. I miss my sister, and I'm going to get her back.
This is essentially the same pain that Isadora wanted to fix. So why is it okay for our protagonists to seek to cure this pain, but it was wrong for Isadora to do the exact same thing? Part 3. Goblins. 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 It's easy to dislike the goblins in the Harry Potter universe. They're ugly and scary, and they have weird body proportions and sound mean and act mean, and they're always going on about how much they hate human civilization.
Choose your next words wisely.
But the thing is, none of these things are excuses for mistreating people in real life. So why is it a given that they are in this fictional world? The bad goblin man is fighting back against a society, a system, in which he feels his entire race is oppressed by the rulers, wizard kind. And he's correct. Wizards throughout the game and in the movies treat goblins poorly, make instant judgments of them, write off their entire species as greedy, evil monsters by nature.
You spoke to a goblin about this.
Oh, your goblin friend?
Your clientele's not what it used to be, Sirona.
Friendship between wizards and goblins is rare enough.
They are all in their own way dangerous, especially if one does not know how to handle them properly.
What exactly are these things?
They're goblins, Harry. Clever as they come, goblins, but not the most friendly of beasts. Very well.
I want to know why these
goblins are attacking us, maybe these woods are their rightful land, and from their perspective...
You are scared of the powers goblins possess.
You, goblin. I need to talk to the goblin.
I was thinking about dead goblins.
In this game, we encounter two main goblins. The antagonist, Ranrock, who seeks power enough to liberate his brethren through obtaining magical artifacts he believes are legally his property anyway, and Lodgok, his brother, who is really nice and helpful and on the side of the good guys, and who is best friends with a transgender woman. The Goblin brothers, incidentally what I refer to my own siblings as, were aligned in their hatred of humankind for most of their lives. The only thing separating them is that Lodgok once received a single act of kindness and respect from a human, after a lifetime of mistreatment, and it fundamentally changed him.
She was studying something so intently that she almost didn't notice me. When she looked up, I thought she would react with fear or disdain. But instead she did something that I will never forget. Without a moment's hesitation, she smiled and asked me to sit with her. She told me that she was a researcher. She wanted to work together. The reverence with which she talked of goblins and their intelligence and skill, it caught me entirely off guard. I'd never been treated with such respect by a witch or wizard. After that, something shifted in me.
You have to be seriously messed up by society, and society has to be seriously messed up in turn if all it takes is one person being nice to you to completely change your viewpoint. From this point on, Lodgok forms and maintains friendships with multiple humans, to the point of being rejected by his own kind, marked as a race traitor, and estranged by his own brother.
I'll never understand you, Lodgok. So gullible. That witch did not consider you an equal. She, like all wizard kind, sought only to use you.
You're wrong, Ranrock.
The young ones are especially deceitful. They are taught to hide their disgust for us, as they exploit us.
Astonishing that our ancestors ever trusted each other.
Ranrock never received this kindness, and so never viewed humans as kind. So why does the narrative paint him as so bad? It refuses to go deeper into his story or his character. He's a one-note villain who is considered wrong for fighting against a system and a world that is actively pushing him down.
For centuries, wizards have refused to share their magical knowledge with goblins. Thus, many goblins, myself included, have spent our lives mistrusting wizard kind.
And goblins are even banned from owning and using wands, one of the most fun things about the wizarding world.
Your kind will not even let us carry wands. As a wand carrier, you should have an advantage.
I've been wanting to play with this.
Part 4. Owning the Things.
Can you repeat the part of the stuff where you said all about the things? The things?
Furthermore, the goblins' notion of ownership is such that anything made by goblins belongs to goblins.
Goblins believe that the rightful owner of any object is its maker, not its purchaser.
Wizard kind see things differently.
You're looking at what it is, rather than what it means. To most goblins, this is more than a mere helmet. It inspired greatness. That is, until it was no longer ours. Then it became something else. A symbol of what has been lost, of all that wizard kind has taken from us.
This isn't wrong, it's just culturally different. But it is a concept constantly mocked by the wizards.
The arrogance of wizard kind. Goblins built this repository. It belongs to us.
From the Goblins' perspective, this is how the world works, and it isn't respected by the wizards, so there is a conflict. The Goblins see these massive containers storing the power of ancient magic, which were created by goblins and thus belong to them. In their minds, they are just reclaiming what was always theirs, which has been unjustly kept from them. The thing that makes me so uncomfortable about this difference in notion of ownership being treated as a joke is how strongly it echoes the experiences of indigenous people during colonization. In North America, at least, there were indigenous tribes that lived off the land, but they didn't own it, like how modern America understands ownership with deeds and mortgages. They had territory they claimed, but it was only theirs to tend and use and borrow from and care for. It wasn't made up of rectangular property lines that could be bought or sold. So when colonialists came and brought their own system of land ownership with them, they just forced it onto the native peoples without consideration for their established ways of life. This led to a lot of colonialist swindlers using tricks and taking advantage by buying land for far less than it would be worth, just so they could feel justified in kicking Aboriginal people off it because in their minds they technically now owned it. They played a deadly and inhumane game that they made everyone else play, even though they wrote the rulebook and didn't let the other players get a good look at it. While you can go out today and buy a house, hypothetically speaking, if you were rich, that is, you would then own some land. But it is still a colonialist sense of ownership. It is land that was never honestly given, and in a way isn't really anyone's to buy or sell. Rightfully, it would all still belong to, in a sense, the Aboriginal people. I digress. But also, even factoring in the wizards, and thus our notion of ownership, be that we buy things or create things and then they belong to us, how exactly is this an argument against the goblins in this scenario? If anyone could claim to own the containers of magic, it would be Isadora, and she was murdered by her fellow professors. Without a clear descendant, who gets to claim rightful ownership of her belongings? I would say the goblins have as much right to the stores, if not more, than anyone. But they are going to change the status quo with that power, and so they must be stopped.
Goblin kind shall answer to no one!
This era of Harry Potter is known as the Goblin Rebellions, and you can't have a rebellion without something to rebel against.
You can't stop Ranrock's rebellion!
If Ranrock learns of the location of that repository, I fear we shall be destined for a great war.
The sad thing is, while the goblins fail to secure any great power for themselves, they also fail to draw attention to their cause. Their status goes unchanged, or if anything, their reputation among wizards gets worse. This takes place 100 years before Harry Potter, and I think the goblins are due for another rebellion. Oh, and Isadora deserved better. Part 5. They deserved better, and we deserved better. If all of Isadora's students had become zombies, then why didn't the game show us that? Was she even aware of the negative side effects that befell her father? How could the developers improve things? Well, make it more clear that Isadora was actually harming people and deliberately ignoring that harm in pursuit of power. Show her corruption. Show her fall from grace. Give me reason to have her trusted friends turn their backs on her. As it stands, this change happens so suddenly for me. I'm not given enough to go on, and the game assumes what little it has given me is enough to convince me. It's not. I feel for Isadora. The game's conclusion is the equivalent of the professor's argument to her. Just because. She can't use magic the way she wants, just because. That's how the world is. They kill her just because. That's what needed to be done. Ranrock's plans are evil just because. We need to stop him just because. It all leaves me very unsatisfied. The protagonists are all too eager to please their masters without question, without challenging authority. I would have the characters reflect more on why they think Isadora and Ranrock are wrong, flesh out their arguments. And maybe the wizards should realize that these two antagonists weren't wrong for wanting their goals. They just needed better paths for achieving them.
Not all goblins are like Ranrock and his loyalists.
All this time I thought goblins were the enemy. But it was never that simple.
Now you're learning, understanding, finally you're becoming human.
But I also realized that this game and how it treats its villains is perfectly in line with this franchise and how Joanne Rowling views social change.
What an unpleasant coincidence.
The status quo must be protected at all costs. Our society is fine the way it is. I benefited from the system, so the system is good. Marginalized people need to be corrected, not leveled with, and are certainly not to be taken seriously, except as a threat. Now, if it wasn't obvious, I don't recommend that you play this game, and I certainly don't recommend that you buy it. In retrospect, it was a bit of a red flag that my ex already owned the game in advance of my arrival. That being said, some congratulations are in order. Good job, Moira Squire, head writer of Hogwarts Legacy. You may have written the last interesting story this universe has to offer. Your script could have used another draft or two, I think, but good job overall. Thank you. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed my spicy hot takes. Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with me, or if you just want to give me compliments, because compliments are nice. I like them. You could also just insult me if you want. That would be less nice, but is no less within your rights. Good thing you aren't a goblin. My favorite comment from my previous video is, Harry Potter, I hardly know her. From Sawyer Thurber. Here's the voice I would have if I was a goblin in the Harry Potter universe. Oi, I'm Ghibli Nesquik. I'm a goblin. Stop voting against the Goblin Equality Act.